Hey everyone! Today we are going to be making a self-stirring potion because sometimes you just want a little bit extra. And for those of you that just want to go a little bit crazy, this is for you. So I got a hobby kit off of Amazon. I will link it in the description below, and you are going to want this for the motor, the stick or the rod, the battery casing, and the wiring. And this is what's going to help us build the apparatus for this motor. So this is my jar that I decided to use for the potion. The only reason I decided to use this one is because it has a wide mouth and I don't have to fight trying to get the apparatus inside of it. So you can see, I'm going to talk a little bit about putting together the self-stirring apparatus here for a minute, but all I'm doing is I'm going to drill a hole in the top of the lid so that I can have somewhere for the rod to go into. So what you're going to want to do is these motors that come in this hobby kit are 3-volt motors. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to attach it. You can see that I have black and red wires. Those are your positive and your negatives, and you're going to want to attach it to a switch. Now you don't necessarily have to attach it to the switch if you don't want to. You can just take the batteries in and out when you want the potion to stir itself if you want to. I think it's easier with a switch, so I have the wires running to a switch and then from the switch to the battery pack. And then on the motor end, you can see that I have the motor, which is sitting in its housing, and then I have the rod coming down from the motor. All of these items are inside of this hobby kit. Now, at the beginning of this, my plan is that I was going to put a propeller on the end of the rod, and then obviously that portion was going to go inside of the potion so that when I flipped the switch, the motor would turn on, getting its juice from the battery, and it would spin the propeller, and then that was going to stir the potion for me so that it looks like the potion is always moving. And that did not end up quite working. We're going to get to that here in just a little bit, but the propeller did not end up quite working, so I'm going to show you what I did here in a little bit. But basically what we have is now I have this hole at the top of my lid, and that is for the rod to go through. And so that worked out beautifully. Obviously you want your drill bit to be slightly larger than your rod because you don't want anything to seize when the rod is spinning. You want nice free movement, and so you want the hole to be just slightly larger than the rod itself, and then that way you won't have anything rubbing or creating any friction. Now the little ghosty, the little tea light holder that I have on top, I actually 3D printed that. But if you don't have a 3D printer, not a lot of people do, totally fine. You can get any sort of tea light, lamp, whatever. You don't even really have to use a tea light holder if you don't want to. You can use any sort of a topper, would be totally fine. This is just to put over the motor, and eventually the lights, because I'm going to actually put lights inside of this potion too, so that when you flip the switch, the motor goes and the lights, so it's self-stirring and self-lighting. And then I'm going to, that's what's inside the little ghosty. And then the battery pack itself is just going to be mounted on the back of the jar. And I got these off of a Dollar Tree sign, those little potion things. And I thought, oh, that'll be fun. I can use those on the potion and it will hide the battery pack. I actually didn't end up using that in the end, but it's a great idea if you wanted to use something like that, absolutely. And I'm just going to paint the lid of the jar. I'm going to paint it kind of this nude, beigey, tan sort of a color. I didn't want it to be silver. So now that's all dry. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually make the potion. So what you want to do is you want your potion to mostly be alcohol if you want longevity in your potion. Because I'm only going to be using this for the Halloween season, I can get away with using distilled water. If you just use plain tap water, that's not going to work because water still grows yucky things, and you will end up getting mold and other yucky germs and bacteria growing in it if you just use tap water. So I used about half distilled water, which has nothing in it that can grow. I put alcohol in it, and then I'm putting about 4 or 5 drops of glycerin in it. That just helps movement, and it helps things slide around nice and easy. Now I'm going to put my color in it. I'm going to go with a kind of a deep purpley violet color. And all I had was the gel coloring. Now, I'm not a fan of the gel coloring because it leaves little kind of bits and pieces. If I had the liquidy food coloring, I totally would have used that. That would have been great. It would have dissolved way easier and would have just been 100% easier. So if you have that, use it. You can use the gel food coloring, obviously, but again, it kind of leaves little bits and pieces that don't quite dissolve. So that's kind of irritating, although in the long run, it doesn't really matter. It's all in a potion anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference, but I ended up using 2 drops of the purple, and it gave me kind of this purpley blue color, which is kind of what I want. My whole purpose of this potion is that I want it to look like a galaxy. I wanted this to kind of, when the potion self-stirs itself, I want it to look like it's part of the galaxy, like there's galaxy dust drifting through, and that it looks like you're staring up into space. And so for my color, that's what I ended up using for my color. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little cup and I'm going to put alcohol in it. I'm not going to fill it up all the way, probably about 2/3 of the way full. And then I'm going to take this mica powder that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to add the mica powder to it. I'm going to start with silver, obviously, because there's silver stars in the sky. So I'm going to start with silver, and I'm going to add a good amount of the silver mica powder to the alcohol, and I'm going to stir it in and dissolve it. And once that's all dissolved and it's nice, and it almost looks like molten mercury, it's really cool looking. Once that is all dissolved and ready to go, I am going to dump that into my colored potion, my distilled water and alcohol mix. And you can see already that it's got just this mercurial kind of, swirly effect to it. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. I've got alcohol in that cup, and I'm going to add gold mica now. And so I'm going to have the combination of the silver mica and the gold mica, and that's going to give me my galaxy effect. And the mica powder really is what's going to give this the very swirly, Milky Way star effect. And that's the trick to it. Now, you can add glitter. You can add, other things if you want to. It's your potion. You do what you want. But I just feel like the mica powder just really gives it that very galaxy, just kind of mercurial effect that I'm looking for. And then I just topped it off with a little bit more distilled water. And that is what my potion is going to look like when it is self-stirring itself. And that was perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue, and I'm going to glue the motor housing onto the top of the lid. Now you'll notice that, do you see that little blue piece, that attachment piece? That's actually going inside of the lid. You don't want that on the outside, you want it on the inside. That's the part that attaches the propeller rod to the motor. So you want that to be on the inside. So now what we're doing is the propeller, the red propeller that I tried first, it made it spin way too fast. I mean, I had water going everywhere. It was way too fast. That motor's way too strong for that. So I took another propeller, a yellow one, and I cut the fins off of it. And so now I'm going to try this, and I'm going to see if this makes it better. If when I put this motor, this propeller in here without its fins, if it'll actually stir the potion at a good enough speed so that it looks how I want it to. And we're gonna see here that it's still way too fast. This little dang 3-volt motor is stronger than I wanted it to be. I really just want this potion to be very, almost like a gentle, it's from space, right? Nothing in space moves fast. The galaxy is not fast. So I definitely did not want it to be a crazy stir. I just wanted kind of a gentle glide. I didn't want anything crazy. And so these propellers just did not give me that gentle stir that I was looking for. It was just way too fast. And so at this point I called my husband, and now, full disclosure, my husband is an engineer and he did help me a lot with this. And so he tried cutting the propeller fins a little bit closer so that all we had left was just the little ball of the propeller, in hopes that we would have not as much drag, and we would just have the smooth ball. And that did help a little bit, but still not the gentle flow of spin that I was looking for. And I'm trying to explain, no, I just want it to be a gentle spin. So we actually took all of the apparatus off. We took the entire propeller off and we just put the rod in there. And you can see that just the spinning rod itself is enough to agitate the mica enough inside of the alcohol and the distilled water. And look at it. Oh, isn't it beautiful? It's just enough to give it that kind of floaty, gentle, just kind of almost eerie flow to it. That's exactly what I was looking for. So no propeller, no fins, no nothing. All it is just a spinning rod, which is actually very interesting to me, that just the rod agitation is enough for it to do what I wanted it to do. But there you have it. Then we decided to take some fairy lights from the Dollar Tree, and we cut off the battery pack, and then we stripped the plastic off of the wires. And then what you can do is now you can add the wires to the positive and the negative, which you've already got because you have the motor and you have the batteries. And so now you can hook these wires, the positive and the negative wire, right into your electronics that you already have. And you can make these fairy lights work without an extra battery pack, which is nice because I already have the battery pack, so why not just add it onto it? And so what I ended up doing, I actually lost the footage of this, but what I ended up doing was I ended up drilling a small hole in the top of the lid, and then I threaded the end of the fairy lights, and I probably did, I don't know, the top third of the fairy lights, and I threaded it inside the lid in a spiral, and I just used hot glue, and I hot glued the first third of the fairy lights to the top of the lid. And then I screwed the lid on, and then I took the rest of the fairy lights and I popped them inside of my little tea light ghost there. And then the end of the fairy lights, which is where the battery pack would be, I just hooked them right into my motor, into the positive and negative nodes of the motor. And then I just used a little teeny dab of hot glue, and I just hot glued them right into the positive and negative nodes. And now I've got a stirring and lights that run off of that little 3-volt motor, so it works perfectly. Then I put the lid back on, and I hot glued my ghost onto the top, and now I'm taking some cheesecloth, and I'm just going to use some Mod Podge, and I'm just going to Mod Podge the heck out of this cheesecloth, just in parts on the side of my lid. And what I want is I want a draping effect over the back so that it hides my battery pack. So the battery pack is hot glued to the back of the jar, and I wanted something that would hide it. I mean, obviously it's in the back, so you're not really going to see it, but I wanted this drape of cheesecloth kind of to look like an old, an old sackcloth or something. And so it's draping over the back and hiding the battery pack. And then after the Mod Podge had dried for a couple of hours, I'm going to take this wax, this brown wax, and I'm just going to rub it on to the dried cheesecloth. And it's going to make it look really old and worn, almost mossy in appearance, like it's moldy. And then what I'm going to do to kind of finish this off is I'm just going to take some hot glue, and I'm going to hot glue some moss, some of the, now the name is totally leaving me. You get the moss, the dried moss. I just got this at Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to put it around my ghost so that you can't see where I've hot glued him to the lid. And I'm just going to dab this around. Again, I'm making it look old. I'm making it look kind of moldy and worn and just kind of fun. Almost, I don't know, fairy garden-like almost, with the moss and the old worn cheesecloth. And I have a couple of pieces of wood that I'm going to add to it, kind of give it a foresty effect. I have a little mushroom that I'm going to add to it, to kind of, or a little toadstool that I'm going to add to it, kind of, again, give it that effect. But honestly, you can do this however you want to do it. However you want to decorate your potion jar, you do whatever you want to. You could wrap it in rope. You could put chain around it with some little charms hanging off of it. That would be cute. Honestly, you could do whatever you wanted to make this potion jar your own. You decorate it how you want to decorate it. Totally fine. There's a million different ways that you could do this to make this your own. But the cheesecloth is hiding the battery pack that is in the back. It is also hiding my switch. Those two wires, the black and red wires that you see right there, I'm actually going to take a little bit of hot glue and I'm going to hot glue those down onto the back of the jar so that those are hidden as well. And there's my little mushroom. I think the mushroom's so cute. It just adds something. Now what's fun about this is that I 3D printed my little Frankenstein ghost. I 3D printed him out of glow-in-the-dark filament. And so he actually does glow in the dark, which is also kind of fun. Again, you guys, this is so over the top. Halloween is like I love this time of year, so I go over the top with everything on Halloween. So this is just par for the course for me. Then I just printed this out on my Cricut on sticker paper. I just made a little label. It says Galaxy Dust. And then I'm going to put some more moss around it. Again, making it look old and worn, and like this has just been sitting on the shelf for centuries. And it's just going to look very witchy and very potion-y. And then the switch itself is very easy to reach. It's just right behind the ghost there. So whenever you want to turn it on, the rod is going to start spinning on the inside. Now I will tell you, when the mica settles to the bottom, So what's going to happen is the mic is going to all settle to the bottom when this sits and you don't stir it for a while. And so when you turn the switch on, this is not sealed in wax or anything. So this is not like a waterproof type thing. So you do not want to turn this upside down and shake it back and forth. Okay, this is not one of those. Because this is self-stirring, what you want to do is you want to flip the switch, and then that agitated rod is going to spin. And it's very slowly going to agitate the mica from the bottom, and it's going to start swirling it up to the top, and it's going to go from the top and down the sides. And eventually, do you see it? I love it. Look at it. Oh my gosh, it looks so cool. And eventually you are going to get the self-swirling effect, but it does take a couple of minutes for all the mica to come up to the top and down the sides, and then eventually start swirling again once it has been left to settle. So that is something I will tell you. Don't get discouraged if you turn it on and it doesn't immediately start its galaxy swirl. The mica does take a minute or two for it to get back to its beautiful swirl. But this is how it turned out. You can see the lights from the inside and the outside, that and the motor itself turn on just with one flick of a switch. And it does make a little humming noise. That's the battery, but I just think it turned out super awesome. And that is how you overdo it for Halloween. Let me know what you guys think.